Well, very pleasant good afternoon, everybody, and welcome up here to the Coakley Middle School. Just to our right, the brand new one about getting ready to be open. Absolutely beautiful. Mark Hoover along with Joe Pinola as we get ready to bring you cross-country action today as the Norwood girls are taking on a very strong Hopkinton girls program. Joe, a terrific track up here, a terrific environment. You got a lot of different types of parts of this course, a little bit open, woods, uphill, downhill. You know, you've run this course before. What's kind of like the fun part of it, and what's the part that maybe not as much fun?
Well, it depends how much you embrace the hills. We're going to see a neat shot, and Ron Marshalsea is working cameras for us. As he pans to the right after the start, you're going to see the runners going up over a hill, and that's relatively steep, steeper than it might look on camera, but kind of neat to go up there, disappear into the woods, kind of zone out a little bit, and they're going to come out, go across a baseball field, go along a long straightaway to Hawes Pond, loop around. You'll see the runners coming by us about halfway through the race, but I think it's neat just seeing all the different terrain, like you were mentioning, in a very natural setting right here at the middle school. So the runners are off, and unlike the boys' race that we saw a moment ago, that was a little bit tough to tell the difference between the dark green and the gray jerseys, the Norwood girls wearing yellow, and they are going to be certainly something to watch. Norwood's got Natalie Martin, who is a senior, who is right up there along the lead. And we're going to see a couple others in there. Karen Gorman should be up there. Kylie Letourneau is a veteran on this team. The boys' race is kind of in a little bit of a developmental phase, but the girls should be pretty competitive, even though they may not have the numbers that Hopkinton does, but they have some strong runners there at the top, as we see Martin right up there with the lead.
Agreed, and I think, you know, that right there just kind of like looks a little bit different than, you know, the boys' meet that just occurred just before this one. That there we've got a bunch of yellow jerseys entering the woods at the same time as Hopkinton did. The boys program, again, lower numbers and it's still kind of developing. It was all green going in, right? Here already, you know, Norwood is competing, you know, with some of these top Hopkinton runners, and, you know, in speaking with Coach Can and Coach McKenzie, the two coaches for Hopkinton, you know, there's a couple folks to keep an eye out for in terms of Hopkinton. Number 436, Elise, I'm going to say Radawa, is one of their top runners. She was top 4 in a league meet last 2 years and was top 16 in the state last year in D1. So we know what Hopkinton brings to track and field, whether it be, you know, spring events, but cross country too. Again, the numbers here that they have are just astronomical. You know, I mean, there's probably a reason that, you know, the marathon starts in Hopkinton, right? They love their track out there. They love to run, and every year it is a solid program, and they don't rebuild, as they say. They just kind of reload. I mean, they lose seniors, and it doesn't matter because they chalk up a bunch of freshmen, and they're just able to, without missing a beat.
So here they come across the field. Now, I've got to imagine, we can't quite see it from here as we both forgot our binoculars, but I imagine that's Swadara, who is maybe in the lead by a couple steps, but that's Natalie Martin right behind her, and Norwood is right in this race. We were talking through the boys' race a little bit about how the scoring works. It's an interesting system here in track where the top 5 runners from each school are really what determines it. So it's not like overall, oh, you have 40 runners, so you're going to score X amount of points. Really, there's only 5 runners that will score for each team. And Norwood, who looks like right now has positions 1, 4, and 5, is in a pretty good spot. So even though Hopkinton has come in with a large army, Norwood is finding themselves very competitive early on, and it could come down to some of those down ballot runners here.
And I think that's what's kind of interesting about how, you know, the scoring in cross country works, is that you get, for your top 5 runners, you know, that corresponds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the points, you know, correspond that way. And like you said, you know, Joe, it's those middle runners, right? Your
Right.
6 and 7 ones that can be very, very important. So yeah, you could show up with 146 runners, but if your top runners from a smaller squad, such as Norwood, if they can kind of work their way into a couple in the top and a couple in the middle, it can prove to be very, very interesting. We saw the opposite, unfortunately, with the boys' meet, where it was just a lot of green jerseys coming through, you know, through most of the beginning of the race. But here we've already seen yellow up front pushing the Hopkinton runners. So
So we'll keep the camera right here as we should see the leaders who are right now doing a little bit of a lollipop around Hawes Pond. A lot of construction going on there, obviously, with the new pool coming in. I'm sure Jack McCarthy is going to have more about that on Norwood Digest at some point. But it's neat to see them going around, getting a different view, and now they'll be coming kind of through those trees. There's a little intersection here. They'll head back on into the woods, initially on a crushed gravel path, and then kind of navigating through some interesting footwork, maybe around some branches, and eventually coming back out on the baseball field.
You could not have asked, though, for a better day for this, right? I mean, it's very cool, very comfortable. There's no breeze whatsoever. It's overcast. You know, from a runner standpoint, this has got to be just ideal conditions.
For sure.
Right? You know,
speaking of ideal conditions, it looks like the Hopkinton boys team hasn't quite gotten enough of running a 5K today. They're still going, and we can't quite see it from here, any numbers, but it looks like they've got a whole gaggle of runners coming across the field.
I could never quite understand it. Like if you go to, like say you're doing a road race, for charity or whatever,
Right.
There's always a couple of people that want to run before the race. They then run the race, finish, and then run again.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know how you do it. But yeah, it looks like a lot of them are probably getting that post-run stretch in, a couple are at least kind of walking it out. But yeah, there was a whole bunch of them come through.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing everybody taking their different approach to stretching here, so... Hey, whatever works, whatever gets you stretched out. Maybe we need the Ministry of Silly Walks, but who knows? Either way, these runners are certainly getting their stretch after a really solid performance from the Hopkinton boys. But the girls, just through that intersection, are now coming through and starting to make some noise as we've got some Norwood runners right up there with the Hopkinton runners.
And I think what's kind of nice, too, is, as we see the boys' team, who obviously have finished their meet or heading down into that area, you're now cheering your teammates as they come through. So it kind of gives you that, as a runner, maybe that little adrenaline push as, your teammates cheer you on. So Hopkinton, their boys team, to see what they can do to cheer on their teammates.
Seems to be a little bit of a gap in the girls' race. So interesting that we saw some of the leaders coming through just through that tree-lined area. And here's a couple other runners coming through as we see the Norwood boys just off camera finishing a strong race. There they come on into your frame. So it looks like they were doing their stretching over on the field while Hopkinton was doing across the baseball field. Norwood is still there with a couple runners, hard to see from our perspective. If you're just checking this out, Norwood had 5 runners in the boys' race. And I believe a lot of them beat or came pretty close to their PR, putting up solid performances.
Yeah, they, again, Hopkinton has just some very strong runners at the top of their roster on the boys' team. But we were commenting when we saw some of the boy runners, come through for Norwood, even whatever position they may be in. They looked steady, they looked strong, they looked very confident in their abilities and their running. And they didn't look, again, overly winded. So it's clearly the conditioning that, Coach Worcester's putting them through. And that kind of stuff will start to pay off. It's a young team, 1 senior, 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores right now. So, we also mentioned the middle school having the program. It's hard to build on. It's always been kind of a difficult sport to draw folks to. As we can see just through the trees, there's a group of 3.
A lot of Norwood runners very close together.
Yep.
And you're going to see that a lot. We talked about that before, that runners are going to pace each other and maybe kind of bring up some of those practice times, because it's not just you and a pair of headphones running around the block. Now it's now it's you and competitors that you're trying to beat.
Right.
And we saw last year, or maybe a couple of years ago, a really strong finish in one of these races from the I think it was the boys' meet. So you never know. It could come down to a couple seconds, even though it seems like obviously there's a long time.
Well, they're coming out of the woods here of our first 2 runners, and you were talking about competitive. and it just looks like they are stride for stride coming out here.
Leaving the others in the dust at the moment. Now, we're going to look at the numbers. Number 436 for Hopkinton is Elise Radara. She is a senior and one of Hopkinton's best runners, at least on paper. Natalie Martin is there, I believe, right behind her, as we see number 1115, that is.
Yep.
So these two No, it's number 435, it looks like, for Hopkinton. So that's Avery Sawyer, at least on our roster.
Yep. One of their captains.
So Sawyer is doing a great job here, and we're just kind of going off the rosters that the coaches had given us before. We appreciate them helping us out and giving us some of the names and some of the numbers.
Makes life a little easier, but yeah, but boy, that gap between second and third is almost a little bit like the boys when we were watching earlier when Finnegan came through for the Hopkinton boys. He was almost about to where the girls are now by the time that second place came around. So 1-2 pretty much guaranteed now out of that, because here comes the number 3 runner right here.
Yeah, hard to get an identity on there as those bibs tend to flap around a little bit. Number 410 is Grace Gallagher, a sophomore, as she passes us currently in 4th place. Now, Norwood had 4th place and 5th place when they were coming through the first half of the race. It looks like Gallagher and her teammate have taken over 3rd and 4th for the time being, but Norwood, Mark, is not that far behind.
You've got a nice set coming right through here. So it looks like you'll have 5 and 6.
Yeah, that's Karen Gorman.
And who's that? Bridget
Flynn, it looks
Flynn
like.
Make the turn there.
And that's Claire Ristow, who is a junior wearing number 434. Here is number 439, Jillian Turan, a sophomore. So relatively close. Norwood is going to, for them to really make a dent into this race, they're going to need Gorman and Flynn to get up there into some of those early spots, and they're in striking distance at the moment.
Yeah, you can just see the Hopkinton run that they are chasing down just took the turn into the woods as they hit the bottom of that hill, and like you said, Joe, it's deceiving in terms, from here, like, oh, that's just a small little hill. And Ron Marshalsea was mentioning how when he did his Pop Warner days here in 6th grade, many lovely memories of doing crab walks up and down that hill. So it's steeper than it certainly looks.
Absolutely. Now we're seeing the runners come in, and Mark, I'm having my doubts that we may have some of the Hopkinton runners wrong here. As we expected to see Swadara up there, I saw 435 come across first.
Yep.
I'm almost wondering if our rosters are off by maybe one number, and that was Sawyer, who was running in second, at least for Hopkinton, battling with some of those Norwood girls.
Right, and that might make sense. Because, that was, their coaches basically had said that, Elise was the one to keep an eye out for them as one of their top runners. So we're going to blame that on the Hopkinton coaches who sent us the
you never know. Maybe we've got some new runners that are making their PRs in a big way today.
That's right. So we're kind of in you're kind of in a tough position, right? You might be calling the wrong name, or you're calling the right name. You're like, well, what don't you think? So we're going to go with either one right now. They'll know who they are, I guess.
For sure.
At the end of the day, they'll know who they are. So a nice pack of, you can see, heading up that hill there's just a good solid pack of Hopkinton runners, Joe, kind of doing exactly what you had mentioned in terms of setting a pace with each other.
Yeah, and here comes a Norwood runner passing through.
Sienna Powers comes through, just a freshman there.
Wearing 11:16 as she takes a quick glance to the right.
Yep.
I'm sure not loving seeing that hill off in the distance, but it's a quick one. At least once you get over to the top.
Yeah.
Credit to the girls who are all running up this hill. I think we saw a couple of the boys taking their time, walking. Again, nothing wrong with that. Conserve your energy, run your race. But all the girls have attacked the hill, at least thus far, very strongly.
Yeah, and it's interesting, earlier we had seen in the boys that some of the leaders kind of took a different route coming up this hill, but every single one of the girl runners thus far has taken that direct line up the steepest portion.
Yeah, another Norwood runner coming through.
Aria Callahan.
A freshman.
Callahan, yep, another freshman comes through.
Bridget Flynn had a very strong showing as a freshman. We just saw another freshman in Powers. Now Callahan getting in there. 11:14 is Kylie Laterno, a junior. So Norwood is certainly mixing in with Hopkinton here. Hey, maybe they're letting the Hopkinton runners pace them or vice versa.
Yep. Because it looks like Kylie right there is about to move up one spot as she's now step for step.
Absolutely.
As Victoria Hanna comes through, senior, takes the turn.
So Norwood with some cheers coming from the boys' team. So nice to see that they're still here cheering everyone on. Got another 2 runners now coming in.
Well, Hayes and Darty, 2 sophomores, I think. Sophomore and a senior. Tessa being the seniors, they take that turn and off they go.
And I tell you, Hopkinton did bring a big team, But Norwood is, as we keep saying, mixing in there. There are a number of Hopkinton runners that are still crossing by us. So, tell you, both teams getting some really good experience here, running against each other and seeing if they can bring up their personal bests.
And of course, as we were talking about runners, the Hopkinton boys team is also running.
Oh, they're continuing to do it. I give them so much credit.
They're just going to continue to run all afternoon long.
Well, I'll tell you, any way you do it, as we hear them running now with the music playing, any way you got to run this off or maybe train out distance to be able to run stronger the next race. They're really kind of cooling down in a very strong way, which is a very important thing to do.
Sure. Yep. But yeah, I see. Like after having run that hill twice, I don't think I need a third, fourth, or fifth time to do it.
We keep saying it, but they're the ones that keep putting up the strong scores.
Right.
So whatever they're doing, however they're running, wherever they're running, however they're stretching, it's working.
It certainly works for them, right? Well, they're also a little younger than us, so I mean, talk to me when you're 60, boys, and let's see if you're going up that hill.
There you go.
They probably will be. That's the problem.
So here come some other runners coming by across that long field. I've got to imagine, I've only run this myself with a pair of headphones in, but I got to imagine running across this field and seeing nobody else around you like this Hopkinton runner is doing right now. That's got to feel a bit lonely here in the middle of quite a competitive race.
Exactly.
You got to be pretty strong-willed.
Yep. And I think we talked earlier about the mental aspect of running, right? There's certainly the physical aspect. You know, we saw the Hopkinton boys, again, you're cooling down, you're continuing to run, you're continuing to do the hills to cool down physically. But mentally, yeah, I mean, you come out of that woods and you know you still have this entire stretch to go. You know, here we've got at least two runners. You know, there's a Hopkinton runner and a Norwood runner. We see them coming across the field now. You've got someone pacing with you, you've got somebody there, but, you know, that Hopkinton runner earlier, she's all by herself, right? So you've got to kind of mentally push yourself to, you know, to come across that field knowing you still have to go all the way down to the pond again, circle back around, and then still come up to finish, you know.
Exactly.
So it's not easy. It's, you know, your top runners are 16 minutes of doing this, and then, you know, you could be running this. If I were doing a 5K, we'd be like 30, 40 minutes, you know, whatever the time might be. But it's constant, right? And you got to continue to push yourself and mentally be strong enough to do it. So
yeah, you're seeing a lot of those same sights. It's kind of neat to see back in the woods there. There must be some old wooden paneling, it looks like.
Yep.
Somebody has spray painted ghost stangs on it.
Yeah.
It's the little things that you see that, and maybe it gives you a little boost of energy to get through a short stretch of the race.
Yep. And, you know, and again, we had the boys meet earlier, and that was exciting. But there just seems to be more of a vibe, more of a crowd.
Right.
I mean, the noise down at the bottom of the hill, and I don't know if Ron's picking it up, but there is a nice little section of folks down by the bleachers down here at the bottom of the hill that are just cheering all of these runners through, regardless if you're, you know, a Hopkinton or a Norwood person. To me, it's a lot like swim meets, you know, where they, you know, the fans push everybody, right?
Yep.
You know, every swimmer, every runner.
And for sure, they're continuing to come. But now I think we see a glimpse of those neon shoes coming through. This is Hopkinton's lead runner that, although it might be looking like she's crossing the field, she's going to come across the infield here. And it looks like, now I'm not exactly sure who it is because our roster sheets seem to be a little bit off, but she has extended her lead from Natalie Martin, who's only emerging from the trees now.
Yeah. She really, because it was interesting. If that is in fact Sridhara, and the number is off by one.
Wow, look at the strong finish.
Look at this finish coming up here. I mean, she looks like she hasn't missed a beat, because it's interesting now, she's taking more of that shallow angle to finish it off.
Now, just as Finnegan did in the boys' race.
Yep, exactly. So, you know, it's one of those, they run this race beforehand, so, you know, they probably have that planned out in their brain where they want to go and how they want to run this.
And she finishes quite strong. We don't exactly have the times from us. But look at the boys' team coming out to cheer on Natalie Martin, who will be Norwood's first finisher in this race. Natalie was neck and neck with one of the top runners in the TVL for a lot of this. Yeah. She's a great athlete and finishing real strong here.
Yeah, very solid run.
So Norwood will get
Yeah.
second place here, so they will not be at least shut out in cross-country terms here. Natalie will score 2 points for Norwood. Swadara, we're imagining, because we're not exactly sure of the identities,
Right.
will score 1 for Hopkinton. Again, you want to get the lowest score. It's going to come down to who's coming through next.
Yeah.
And Mark, for Norwood, is not looking good as we get some sights of what's coming through the trees.
Well, it was interesting. I mean, when we saw the Hopkinton runner and Martin go in after that first really took up the hill there, the short hill the second time, we saw that gap, and it has just increased. But yeah, now you've got 2 Hopkinton that looks like they'll be taking 3rd and 4th. So big points, meaning small number points for these 2 runners. I'm still yet to see anybody emerging, from the woods.
So Hopkinton right now with finishers 1, 3, and 4. The runner with the bright green, I'm going to say it, Seahawks-colored shoes because I'm biased, coming into 3rd place. She has run a strong race the whole time.
Yeah,
but number 410 is right on her tails.
I'll tell you, it's funny. She looked over her shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
And 410 looked like she caught her right there at the end.
Wow, a little competitiveness amongst the
Definitely.
Hopkinton team.
Definitely. It was so funny. She was just right on her tail right there. She looked over her shoulder, and 410 just had a little bit of extra gear to try to finish it up. So they go, what do you say, 1, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm. And
now
things could get a little bit interesting at the finish.
I see a Norwood runner coming out here. Looks like they're going to be battling for at least for 6th.
And we saw moments ago, or earlier in the race, I think that was Gorman and Flynn who were up there for Norwood. They were holding 4-5 earlier in the race, then fell back a little bit, and they were kind of running together for the most part. So interesting to see one Norwood runner, the other one coming through the trees here. But the Hopkinton girl, who's just coming right across this hill, taking the more direct path.
Yep.
I think this may be Sawyer's here, wearing 434, is coming on in, and she will claim the 5th spot for the Hillers.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, because the coach had said, Avery Sawyer, she goes, and this is the coach.
And here
saying,
comes Norwood, number
that's a great
11-10.
finish right there.
Oh,
look at
catch
that
this
finish.
on camera.
Wow. Oh, that is going head to head there at the end. And there's going to be a tough angle at this point.
Let's see. Hard to see it from here.
Looks like she just caught her because
Yep.
it looks like the yellow jersey was. But what a great finish as that came through. But getting back to Avery Sawyer.
And we'll get the Norwood
Yeah.
finisher. That was Bridget Flynn, who's
Bridget Flynn,
a
just
freshman.
As Gorman comes by strong. So Norwood's getting some good solid finishing here. But yeah, so we were incorrect in terms of the numbers that were given to us. But yeah, coach had said that Avery Sawyer, again, she is hard to miss. This is the coach saying she's 6 foot tall and has red hair. So that was clearly
That's got to be her wearing
clearly
434.
Avery Sawyer.
So either way, we by our unofficial results,
Yes.
it looks like Hopkinton has claimed 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So those
Yep.
will be their top finishers. So if we do a little bit of mental math here, that's 19 points for Hopkinton.
Right.
Should secure them first place. Norwood was able to pick up 7th in this race.
Yep.
And then we kind of lose exactly where the numbers are. I think there might have been somebody else sneaking in ahead of Gorman
right there
there.
on that last push, right? Yep.
So if we're kind of doing a little math here, Norwood had the 2nd place finisher. You're kind of seeing me do this in my brain right
so
on
we didn't know
camera.
there'd be math involved in this.
So they had the 2nd place
study.
finisher in Martin.
Yep.
And then they will, depending on how they get displaced,
Yep.
could potentially have 7, 8. We'll see where the points stack up here. 9, 10, 11, 9, 10.
Yeah.
So 15, 25, 34, 36. I don't know exactly. We'll see where the numbers are. 36 to 19. How does that sound?
We'll go with that until somebody tells us otherwise. As we watch, again, the rest of the runners.
Yep.
you know,
Here comes a
finish
big
it up.
group
Yeah,
of Hopkinton
yep.
runners.
This might have been that one group we had seen, head on up that hill that were all kind of, packed in together.
Yeah, I tell you, sometimes, running with each other, especially through a course that's unfamiliar. Now, we know the TVL likes this course. I know they hold their championships a lot of times here
Yeah.
at the Coakley Middle School. So credit to Norwood that they're also continuing to host this event despite all the ongoing construction
Yeah.
that's behind us, not only at the middle school, but also at Hawes Pond. As you see, again, a number of runners. Number 420 is kind of the last of that group for Hopkinton, but certainly not the last in the race.
Yeah.
And they're getting quite a nice hand. The Hopkinton boys team has showed up to support in numbers here as they cross the finish line, just as the Norwood boys are doing as well. So
Without
good
question.
sportsmanship on both sides. Get another Hopkinton runner who's kind of been pacing herself the whole time. Number 414 coming through past us. Really putting in some good work today.
But getting back to this particular trail here, this meet, it is a really challenging course, and I think that's probably why the TVL and the MIAA like this particular course, because it's not just a flat-out cross-country run, right? You've got a bunch of different types of environments that the runners have to contend with. Again, between the small uphills, the longer downhill stretches back through the woods, and then this double hill, steep finish really makes it challenging in number of aspects for these runners. So it's a different thing. The environment is changing. The conditions are probably changing. Like you said, Joe, you head back into the woods, temperature can dip, wind can dip, conditions, you might be on some sort of softer, surface. Then you've got a bit of the gravel here and all that. So it's a nice environment back here. It's kind of something really to be proud of, that we've got this nice facility for this cross-country meet. That it's a privilege to host.
Yeah, it's the only varsity team that is hosted by the Coakley Middle School. They do have a lot of programs going on here. Saw middle school tennis that was happening yesterday with some of the high school seniors helping out with that. As we see 427 crossing here for Hopkinton. Now, based on the cheering,
right, so
I imagine we're one off, and that's Avery Merrill, a sophomore.
Right.
So
yes.
Sometimes if you listen for the names, which the cheering has been getting louder as more and more have finished.
Right.
Norwood's going to have a runner coming through here. I think this is going to be Sienna Powers, a freshman, wearing number 1116.
Yep. Now, we are assuming that our runner numbers are correctly, because Norwood put their numbers together. So, yeah, Powers comes through strong. And that's, again, you look back at that, and just a great solid kick there finish for her.
Absolutely. And thanks to the Norwood coaches and obviously Hopkinton for giving us some insight into these races. Coach Worcester for the boys, and Coach Loja, Coach Alana Katie for the girls. All three Norwood teachers who now here after school, putting in time with the extracurricular activities, as so many teachers do. And all three of them have been involved with this program for a long time now.
It's one of those, I really enjoy doing and covering these types of events, right? Again, it's not so much a huge spectator sport. As Callanan comes through there, again, just a freshman. Aria finishing up strong back there too, trying to catch the runner in front of her.
And right to our left, Kylie Letourneau, number 1114, finishing as well.
See if she can hold off this Hopkinton runner right behind her. Looks like she's going to be able to.
Absolutely. Hopkinton is trying to will their runners on here at the finish, getting every little ounce of energy that they have left.
But being able to cover these types of sporting events, and then to be able to get them, on NCM, where, once Ron gets back and works all of his magic for editing and whatnot, it's just kind of great, because these runners, these parents, these grandparents, or whatever, can look back and kind of, relive, as it were, a cross-country meet. And I think that that's kind of special for every athlete. I mean, they put in their time just as much as hockey players, basketball, football, They are, some of the finest tuned athletes you'll probably ever run into, right? And I think what's great about this sport, I mean, this is something that they're going to be able to do forever.
Behind us. Yeah, absolutely, and even if they're runners who are lower down in the standings here, these are runs that are helping them develop and could turn them into contenders down the road. As I think this is Doherty finishing.
Yeah,
Caroline Doherty, a sophomore, wearing 1109 with a strong finish with nobody else near her.
And I look across the way, and this is what I love about this sport, right? I don't know if Ron can pick that up, but the Hopkinton boys team right there was cheering her on as if it were a Hopkinton runner, right? Because you're like, they think of each other as, runners, right? You are doing something that they all love doing. And so cheering on, regardless of who it is, right? Regardless of what colored jersey you're wearing.
Yeah, it's an accomplishment either way.
It really, really is. Yep, to finish strong. and just to finish.
Yeah, there's no guarantee you
Yep.
finish. That's
No.
the thing. We were saying that in the boys' race. Yeah, Norwood has 5 runners score. But those runners had to cross the finish line. Otherwise, Norwood's only getting 4 runners
That's
to
right.
score.
That's right.
So even though, of Norwood's finishers, for example, Oscar Ring was the last to come through, he's still finishing the race. He still beat some Hopkinton runners.
Yep.
And he's still scoring some points for Norwood that he wouldn't have if he had just been sitting on the bench.
Tessa's finishing up strong here, too.
So Tessa LaHace,
Yep.
number 11-13, and Vicky Hanna, number 11-12, a senior, finishing right behind her with a Hopkinton runner sandwiched between them.
Yeah, and again, looks to be in good shape. In other words, you're finishing strong, a good solid pace.
Right. And nice cheering from
Yep.
Coach Katie right there in the gray. Tell you, the coaches from Norwood were moving down to the different parts of the race. They weren't just standing up here at the finish line saying go and waiting for you to return. They were really getting involved, watching the runners, seeing what their splits were. So, tell you, coaching track and coaching cross country is not just the sit and watch thing that maybe some people stereotypically
Go run,
think.
have a good time, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's no golf carts inside. I remember sometimes that in gym class where the teacher would say, "Hey, go run, and I'll see you on the other side."
wait-
and they'd take
wait
the
for
golf
that
cart
bell.
to meet us.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
No, but you're right. It was interesting to see them kind of move around the course with their
Right.
watches. They kind of knew where their runners were. They knew what the various splits were, the times were, and where they what they could work on and whatnot. So yeah, they're very involved with just about every aspect of this, right? Between training, setting the practices, getting the meets together, and then getting them both boys and girls through their paces and able to to complete this as they did. So
So I think things have quieted down behind us. I imagine we are just about, or if not at the finish. The chute is still up there. But yeah, the Norwood coaches, I know Coach Katie was a great runner in her own right. I don't know much about Coach Lozer or Coach Worcester's past history with running, but they've certainly made an impact on this program and something else to be proud of today as Norwood claims second place. They had by my count, the 6th place finisher as well, against a really strong Hopkinton team. Nothing
Very
to sneeze
strong,
at,
no.
even though the Hillers will come away with the victory.
yeah, they will take both. And again, kind of coming in, it was an uphill battle, no pun intended, or pun intended. But yeah, Hopkinton is just so strong. They really are, and you knew that coming in. And I think it kind of comes back to also part of that mental aspect to it, right? That you're going up against one of the top cross country teams, certainly in the TVL, if not in the state, right? And then being able to take that mentally and still go out and have to run the 5K through changing undulations and conditions and whatnot, and to do it as well and as strong as they did. So it's just a pleasure to watch these young athletes. They put a lot of time and effort into
Even
this.
post-race.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see all the
know.
Hopkinton runners were doing, the
know.
Norwood runners,
I'm
the
tired watching
stretching,
that.
the running that continues? Tell you, that's practicing because they'll be right back out there
Exactly.
the week following.
Yep.
Norwood takes on Ashland next week as both teams will travel up there as they will have 5 meets before, I guess, the combined meet with everybody else. So another dual meet is on tap for them. It seems like Wednesdays are the days. So some days to practice, some days to stretch out and really rest those legs and get yourself ready. But no rest for the weary for either team.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. So it has been an absolute pleasure. Ron Marshalsea capturing all of the action for us.
Ron has had to work hard today. Left, right, forward, backwards.
Constantly moving. It's professional. That's why we pay him the really big bucks.
That's right.
So
He knows how to work all the technology that we don't.
They won't let us near it. They don't let us near it. They know better. So for Joe Pinola, I'm Mark Hoover, and for Ron Marshalsea behind the camera, thanks so very much for joining us up here out of the Coakley as we pleasure to bring you boys and girls cross country as they took on Hopkinton today. Have a great afternoon, everybody.